Welcome back to Things You Don't Hear in Church podcast. My name's Ethan.
And I'm Derry.
And on today's episode, we have Gable Price from Gable Price and Friends. That's who you heard in the intro. Switch it up with the music.
Yep.
Yeah, Gable Price is a musician out of, based in Redding, correct?
Yes, Redding, California.
Redding, California, right on. He's an excellent singer, songwriter, and artist. And with his friends, he puts out a number of albums and EPs. And my favorite part about his music is that it's just really good music and breaks the stereotype of Christian music and being cheesy. You know, you hear a lot about that in culture. And so our friend Lindsay actually introduced me to your music, and I was immediately hooked. I heard Heretic and then Repentance and a couple other good songs that I want to give shout outs to. But yeah, it's just really good, well done, not cheesy music that is theologically rich and that is reflected in the lyrics. So really encouraged by that. And along with that, it's also really relatable music. There's songs about struggling with faith, and we'll get into some of the lyrics that have really struck me, and questions and like the feeling when you're in ministry of like, oh, I have to be perfect all the time, and battling like what the public eye sees, but how you're doing truly. That is reflected in as far as I interpret it in the song "I Need You." It talks about that. Really good. So you guys definitely go check him out after the episode. You will not be disappointed.
Yeah.
He has quiet music from that's like meditative and reflective in the song "Repentance" to really like intense, like almost post-hardcore music. If in "Not Safe," you know. And so he's a very versatile artist, and I don't want to take away from the fact that he also is Gable Price and Friends, right? So all those guys together do really well in making music. He's worked with people like Cory Asbury and Bethel Music, and just an all-around great musician. And we're gonna have a great conversation. Mm-hmm. So yeah, do you want to say anything about yourself as we get started?
I'm stoked. We can get right into it. Thanks for having me, guys.
Of course, thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
I'm really excited, like we said. But yeah, so what's your story? Like, how did you get into music and your whole journey to where you are now with producing music and whatnot?
Yeah. It was a pretty, I like to think that it wasn't typical, but it was as typical, you know, as anyone journey to making music is, my dad's was a worship pastor when I was growing up. He never grew up like in church or anything. But when he met my mom, she was like, "You got to go to church with me." And he was like, "Oh, okay, I guess I can go to church." And, you know, quickly what he learned, because his first concert was Pink Floyd. You know, he listened to
cool.
bunch of rock acts and stuff like that. And he goes there and he's like, "This stuff sucks." And so he was always just, you know, like a bar musician, played a Strat, stuff like that. Cool. I'm saying he's still alive. But so basically they got married. He worked at a steel factory, and basically, you know, he decided he was going to our church, and he was like, "We're about to start having." You know, we were born. Sorry, I'm kind of rambling. We were born, and he was like, "Hey, I've got 3 boys," and he's like, "And none of the men in this church are strong men, and they're all kind of weenies," is what he said. And my dad's not really like a macho like guy or anything, but he's just kind of like, these guys are, you know, what am I gonna raise my boys in? And so he went out to find us a church, and so he would go on Saturday night to a different church, and then he'd come with us on Sunday. Eventually he went to one of the bigger vineyards in the country in Cincinnati.
Okay.
And I can't remember if John Eldredge was there or if they were just talking about John Eldredge's book, Wild at Heart. But my dad got really, you know, touched by that. And so my mom always says, I didn't know that. It's an old book. No, it's an old one. But so my dad got really, really touched by that. My mom always says they had $25 and he spent 20 of it on a book. And so he bought that book, got really touched. We started going to the vineyard. And
was that Cincinnati, Ohio?
Yeah, Cincinnati, Ohio.
So you're from Ohio?
You're technically Indiana, but you know, it's only the state.
I was born in Indiana. I was born in Indiana.
What part?
Yeah, South Bend.
South Bend. Okay, gotcha. I know exactly where that is. So go ahead. Oh no, go ahead.
I was saying, then we moved to Detroit, and then I moved to Ann Arbor. So to hear you're from Ohio is like, oh, you're Buckeye. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not even into like, I don't watch sports that much. I just love the rivalry we have with Ohio.
For sure. I've never really been into Ohio teams, but now I am because the Bengals are in the Super Bowl. This will probably air. This will probably air after the Super Bowl, but I hope we won. Basically, so where I grew up was like, so the state line right here. We're on the Indiana side. If you take a left out of the driveway, you're in Ohio in 5 minutes. You take a right, you're in Kentucky. They call it Cincinnati.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so we were at that Cincinnati vineyard for like a few months, I think. And then they're like, hey, we're starting this new vineyard in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. And my dad's like, we're going to go to that one and we're going to be part of it. And so they show up and it's like 4 families and it's a guy singing into a karaoke machine.
Wow.
And he's like, oh, this is so bad. Because that's what he loved about like the big vineyard is he's like, oh, this music's awesome. They're playing like guitars and there's real drums and stuff like that. Yeah. And so he's like, hey, I can do this. And so he starts doing the worship and gets into that. Eventually there's another vineyard that opens more in the Cincinnati area. And so he goes and he's the worship pastor there. That's when he goes full-time into ministry. At that point, I'm about 6, 7, 8, somewhere around there. And that was when United was, Hillsong United was just
right. Pop
below it, like was just huge. And so I remember they would play Tell the World. Tell the world that Jesus lives. Tell the world that. And I loved it because the guitar part. And so I decided then I was like, I'm going to be a worship leader. I never told anyone, never told my dad until I was probably about 11. I told him, he said, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? Because I always said football player, basketball player. And then I was like, I think I want to be a worship leader. And he's like, oh, cool. And so on my 13th birthday, he gets me a Gibson Les Paul. And he says, hey, I want you to be my apprentice. And so my dad, has me be his apprentice. I'd come into the church with him on Thursdays and I'd help like print his chord sheets, help him plan transitions in between songs, watch the rehearsal, stuff like that. And then I would lead the youth. And so, I was 13 leading high schoolers, so I wasn't even in high school yet. So if that doesn't create, like a need to be perfect, I don't know what else does. No, I can lead high schoolers. I'm a big person and I don't make any mistakes. And my search history shows that, and so I apprenticed my dad. I started leading with him some on Sundays. And then from there, it was just natural to where I would lead with him almost every Sunday towards the end of our time at the vineyard. He stopped being a worship pastor when I was about 16, 17. From there, I played a bunch of music with just bands and other churches. Never really found a home church after that until I moved to Reading. Just because like it was really hard to get invested somewhere when you grew up, the WPK, the worship pastor's kid. Right. And so it was really hard to get invested somewhere when I knew I was going to move out to Reading. I decided I was going to move out to Reading when I started apprenticing my dad when I was 13. Wow. And so it was 6 years of me being like, I'm going to move to Reading and I'm going to go to BSSM. And so I was always into music. That's kind of how I got into it. Ministry just kind of came naturally from music because I knew I wanted to play music, but Hawk Nelson wasn't looking for a singer, so I leading worship. But that's pretty much kind of how I got into it. There's other avenues that kind of came from that. Started writing songs because my dad wrote songs. Pretty much everything I did was because my dad did it. So I would write songs because my dad wrote songs. And then I was in a cover band when I was like 12, 13. And I was like, well, we were called Overzealous Noise. And we got our band name from a band name generator app. And the app suggested the band name Overzealous Wind. And we thought that sounded a little bit too farty. And so
I thought about that exact thing when you said that.
a gust of wind. But the musical journey is just it was naturally in there because it was just what made sense. My dad did it for a living. I would do it for a living. My dad wrote songs when he was feeling something, so I wrote songs because I was feeling something.
Wow, cool.
And as you can
who are
tell
like
from my
your-
music, I feel many things.
That's awesome. Who were your like musical influences when you were growing up, like band wise, music wise?
First record was Beautiful Letdown by Switchfoot.
Oh wow, cool.
And then from there, I bought College Kids by Reliant K.
Yeah.
On iTunes.
Classic.
It was 99 cents. Remember that?
Yep. Yep.
It was
I do.
$1.29. Who'd have thunk? And then I proceeded to get that album. I was really into. I like to think that was like the best time of CCM.
Yeah, it really was. Yeah.
Because it wasn't like we were past bongos and we were pre-stomp clap, you know. And so it was great. It was bands, and so Reliant K, I loved them. There's a band in Cincinnati called the Pomegranates, very jam bandy.
Cool.
Super cool. And then I just whoever was winning American Idol that year.
Nice.
So that was pretty much who I listened to back then, was bands and like Christian bands and American Idol winners.
Nice.
Right. Yeah.
Nice. That's
Hawk
awesome.
Nelson, Reliant K, Switchfoot, all those guys.
Skillet.
Oh, yeah.
Skillet too. Yeah, Skillet. Bro.
Yeah.
Reliant K was like my favorite artist growing up.
Yeah.
Oh, geez, they were great. I loved Reliant K. They're going on tour this year. I want to go see them, but
Maybe I can actually go this time.
Yeah.
You should. There's only so many Reliant K tours left.
I know. Last time they went on tour,
There's
I was
not a
here.
lot.
They never come to Hawaii.
No one does, yeah.
They have at least 2 fans here. They should make the trip.
It's so funny. That's what people think is like when we go on like trips and stuff like that, and we'll be like, we are coming to Dallas, Texas. And then there's always someone in the comments, why wouldn't you come to this Texas city? The city's like 42 minutes away from Dallas. Like 550. They're like, why not here? And I'm like, you have no idea that it costs us a lot more to put on a show than we make, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Like, but there's at least 10 of us. There's a cafe.
You can use our youth group room. It's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
I love going to concerts, man.
it's been a while.
Do you listen to Christian hip hop at all?
I haven't. I did when it was kind of like TYDHC and Lecrae and all that back in like 2010, 2012.
Right.
But that was just my older brother's really into hip hop.
Okay, because I know one of those guys who's in the same group as TYDHC and Lecrae. His name's KB. He had a show in like Columbus, Ohio. That's like a 3-hour drive for me. But when you're in the Midwest, 3-hour drive, you're like, who cares? Let's go.
I know.
You know,
you're like 3-hour drive. I can stop at Kroger on the way.
Yeah. My friends and I looked at each other, we're like, so we can't go to the Detroit show because our schedules don't work. Like, are we gonna drive 4 hours to Columbus? And we're like, yeah, we are.
Yeah.
And
you know what it was is if you grew up in the Midwest, it's like I can't go to the Detroit show because I have 4-H today. And, and the next day, you know, we have JROTC, and so I'm gonna go.
That's so fun.
Yeah.
That's great.
Love Midwestern culture.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I wanted to ask you about some of the lyrics of what some of the music you've put out, right? And because I feel like you said, you feel a lot of things that gets put into your music. And what I think probably my favorite song that I've listened to, it's got to be either Underdressed or I Need You, because I think those hit home for me, right? Like, I told my fiance about your song Underdressed, and I showed her it, and I was like, this has got to be played at our worship nights here in Honolulu. And so, because she's a worship leader, and so I think the last time she did one of the worship nights, she did Underdressed. And I'm like, it's just such an amazing song. For you guys who don't know the song, go check it out. But it talks about how holy God is and how amazing he is, and we are underdressed, but yeah, he still loves us and he still is there for us. It's the contrast between God's holiness and our sinfulness, but yeah, God loves us, always gets me excited. I think it should get everyone excited, you know? Like, it's good news. That's why it's got the gospel.
You know, that's an interesting one. You know, what I really wanted to write with that song, and I love that song and it feels really special, but I think a lot of songs feel like they're glorifying God because it's like, God is great because I suck. And I'm like, well, maybe he's not great. Maybe he's just fine and I'm just the worst, you know? And so, you know, one of the things that I always try to emphasize with writing music, and especially with Underdressed, especially if it's about God, it's I I could be the best human of all time,
Yeah.
and it wouldn't even scratch the surface of what it means to be infinite
Right.
and what it means to be God, you know?
Right.
And so it's like this thing of like, God's not great because I'm the worst. I'd like to think that I do, like, you know, I do a really good job at this whole life thing. And it's like, but at my best, I'm still, you know, a polo to
Right.
to like a black tie dinner, you know?
Mm.
And so it's, you know, with that song, I was just, you know, it's just a contrast, you know, he's infinite, yet he sits at a table with us. He's holy, but sits with humans. It's not necessarily like, yeah, it's just interesting. It's
Right,
interesting.
awesome, yeah.
Like that song still makes me think a lot. And I felt like I got lucky with that one, you know, where I was like, oh man, how did I kind of, you know, like, I'm like, man, all of that just kind of happened in a day. And and now I think I'm like, I should write a song like that. That's like profound and stuff. And I'm just like, nah.
That's so funny. I like how you did that. How you kind of took the emphasis off of like the worship songs. Emphasis is off of the human sin and onto the greatness of God, not needing that contrast necessarily, even though there is that contrast, but just shifting it to how great God is instead is kind of cool.
Yeah. 100%. Thank you.
Yeah. And then in the same type of vein, I saw this meme that said Midwesterners will say the other day and mean like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So like a couple months ago, I was thinking about this and like the character of God and just pondering his existence. And one of the things about God and Jesus that you see is that he's humble, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I think the scriptures talk about him being like humble in heart or something like that. But like you think about the most maximally powerful and infinite being that's ever created anything. If he decided not to be humble, it would make sense. He's the one who has all the accolades. He created everything. He's the one who needs to be humble the least, you know, like no one can match him. But yet he's humble.
Yeah, and a servant, right?
Yeah, and it's like, God, what? Like you created everything and you're this unapproachable light and you tell Moses that if you look at me, you'll die because you're so holy. So we have to see only, like the backside of you and you're humble. You're not like showboating. And when he talks about how glorious he is, he's not being prideful. He's just like, I'm like, man, God, I think I heard all day just meditating.
I think I heard someone at Bible school say that exact thing. You know, if you look at me, you'll be blinded by how holy I am. You know?
That's all funny.
But yeah, so you went to BSSM.
I did. I did all 3 years of it. It was a great experience. I was 19. Didn't grow up in charismatic environment, and I came into the most.
I was gonna say you went to the as far charismatic as you could go.
yeah. And so it was great. I loved it. I learned a lot. I met everyone who's in my band. I met my manager.
What year were you there?
I was there from 2017 to 2020. And so
I think I had some friends there.
I got a ton of friends who were there that time.
Really?
Yeah.
I wonder if I knew any of them.
Do you know a guy named Jason? We call him Sugar mostly.
Oh yeah, I know Sugar. He's still here.
Whoa! No, he's on the island actually now.
He's
where I am. He's with his girlfriend on the island now. Here.
Did he just move back like a week ago?
Yeah, I think he moves like back and forth. Like he'll go back to be there for a while and then come back here. So I think he's like doing kind of both.
I saw a play that he was in. Like.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Wow.
You did a great job.
Yeah. He's a cool guy. He's great.
Sugar.
Yeah. I can't remember if my friend left at this part of the year, but Quayla Harris.
But that's a great name.
No. Yeah. And then her friend Christine, I don't know her last name. Christina, she married my friend, so now I don't know her old last name, but they called her Spiff.
Oh, nice. They're also a great nickname.
Yeah. But I think maybe they're there at 2016. I'm not sure. That's so cool that you guys kind of know the same people.
Yeah.
Small world.
I'm sure we know a lot of the same people. I know a ton of people who live down up there.
Yeah. One of
down up
there.
Down up there, whatever. Who knows when you're on an island?
Right. It's just mountainside, beachside.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I was reading over your lyrics this morning for Heretic because that was one of the first songs I heard, and when I first heard it, I was thinking it was talking about differences in like maybe beliefs about God, right? Where because the lyrics are either you're a heretic or you're the son of God. And then I was reading it over this morning. It seems like the song is talking. Is the song talking to God and like talking about our contrast between like what we think about God and the reality of God, or like, yeah, what's the story and what's the message of the song?
I mean, there's a lot of different stances in there in terms of if it's being facetious, if it's being direct, or if it's being, because a lot of times what I'll do is I'll say one thing, but it's said in a sarcastic manner, in the songs. And so a lot of times I think I started writing that song from a place of being really, really frustrated and grieved by just this modern thing, especially in church world, where we're very much known by what we're against versus what we're for. And our battle isn't with the powers of darkness. A lot of times it's with different beliefs within the Christian faith. And it almost feels unattainable to please Christians within your own belief, worshiping the same God, right? Because it's like, oh, are you a Christian? Oh, yeah, I'm a Calvinist. It's right. Like, right. Oh, okay, I'm better than you. Yeah. It's like, are you a Christian? It's like, yeah, I'm Catholic. It's just like, right. It's never a yes. Yes, I follow Jesus, and sometimes it is. You meet great people, but I think there was probably 6 months straight I just felt really, really irritated about how everywhere you went in comment sections, there's no everyone. If you believe something different, or something that you say something just doesn't make sense to someone else, that it's a false doctrine. It is false prophet, a false teacher, a heretic. And so the frustration kind of came from like a lot of just the modern day Christian faith and comment sections on everything was just this and it was just almost like I said, it was like Christians were fighting with Christians when they were fighting with darkness. And and so that's what made me want to start it. And then, like always, my frustrations with others make me realize that I'm the exact same. And so I felt frustrated in that, I started to realize I'm like this is man, I bet they'd be called Jesus. I bet they would call Jesus a heretic. And I bet I bet Jesus would be a false prophet. And I'm like, oh wait, that happened. It was the Pharisees. And all these things. And then I'm just like, wait, crap, would I be one?
Yeah,
right.
Because I started to realize I'm like, oh, I'm the exact same. I'm like, I am so quick to jump the gun on other people. And so a lot of it was a lot of my songs are me voicing my frustrations to God and then being like, oh, and I'm the same. If you walk into their home, if you walk into our home, and it was like, if you walk into my home, because it's just like, it's so much of like, I just would get so frustrated with the current state of Christianity that I would, I would start writing a song about it, and then I'd be like, oh, there it is. That's me.
Yeah, it's kind of like that when you read the Bible and you're like, I know this happens a lot with Israel. You'll see Israel doing a bunch of dumb things, and God's like, stop doing this. And then it can often be like, these guys just, how many times they got to be told what to do?
Yeah.
And then you're like, and then, then they're like, you guys are idiots. And then you're thinking about yourself in reflection and like, God, how does this apply to me? And then you're like, oh, I'm the idiot. I get it. I see.
I'm like, cool. I'm like, cool. That's for sure me. That's for sure us, It was just like, so that song was very much born of like, conversations, frustrations, fears that I would be a Pharisee if this all happened again, which I mean, like it won't, but like if it all was to happen, exactly how it happened right now, where would I be? And I think when I was writing it, it was just this realization of like, oh, I don't think I'd be one of the good guys. And so it was just, if you walked into my home and you made your glory known, would my tears soak your feet, or would I crucify you? And I'm just like, I really don't know. And that is really terrifying that I don't know. And I don't know how to know. Like, I don't know how to change what my reaction would be. And so the chorus was just the invitation, would just defend my mind, you know.
Yeah.
But don't let me be so brave that I ignore you, or don't let me be too smart for you, in the sense of like, and I be smart in a facetious way. I don't mean like,
right.
I'm far too grown for this. And so basically my whole thing with that song was just, hey, if it's childish to need you, let me be the newest born infant of all time. And then teach me how to learn your way. And so that was basically that song. That's
amazing. And I think that's something that's like so key to keep on the forefront of our minds, because like we love theology and philosophy. Like I consume, well, Derry consumes more philosophy content than I do. He knows Derry's a genius when it comes to philosophy, but yes, he is. He won't say it, but he's really educated in it. But it's just like, it's so interesting, and theology is so interesting, and knowing these big theological terms and where they come from and the verses that back them up, how it works. And I think they're noble efforts to try to understand God. I think pursuits. Anytime you're studying the Bible to try to know God, you're doing theology, right? Because theology is just the study of God. It's when you get the knowledge that becomes like
pride. Then right?
Right. And like I've been mulling on this for like a couple of weeks now, like where Paul says, if I have all wisdom and all gifts and I speak in all tongues and all people listen to me, but I don't have love. He says two things. He says, I am nothing and I have nothing. And like Paul, of anyone in his day in the Christian community, besides maybe Peter and James, had the most to boast about. He talks about that too in Corinthians. He's like, do I need a reason to boast? He's like, if anyone has a reason to boast, it's me. He's like, you guys don't understand my accolades. And he lists his accolades. And he talks about all the ways he suffered for Christ in another area. He's like, I have the rights to boast. And he's like, but if I don't have love, I'm nothing. It doesn't matter. It's futile. And that's where that comes from. And like staying as a child and, and receiving the kingdom of God as a child. Jesus says, like, unless you become one of these, you cannot enter my kingdom. Right. And to walk like a child and just like have that childlike faith. And I don't think that means like, because children aren't very smart usually. It's the way things. I don't think it means like staying willfully ignorant, but it means staying in that place of wonder and awe and amazement of who God is.
When we gain so much knowledge and we get like that pride that starts to infect you, it's almost like we become like spiritual gatekeepers almost, and we like we're the ones that allow people in. That's why we always like. That's why we always like say, oh, I'm a this label, or I'm a this and this and this thing. I agree with like this kind of theology. And if you don't agree with that, like you're not as good of a Christian, or your value as a Christian is different now. Instead of, like you said, just loving our brothers and sisters in different denominations and across different platforms for who they are, and like for their love for Christ and not their actions to speak.
That's great. It's like, are you a Christian? I'm part of the elect.
I've been chosen. We have a number of good Calvinist friends that we like, and I like we decided we love.
And they agree with this too.
And they're also like at the point of Calvinism. You know what the cage stage is? Have you heard of that phrase before?
No.
So our Calvinist friends told us about this, like when people first become Calvinists, which is a funny saying because like, did they choose to become Reformed? It's like, but like, did you decide that? But when they first there, it's very easy for people to get so passionate about things because it's like, oh, now I think everything I was taught before is twisted and not be twisted.
Now, right?
What's that?
You know the truth now.
Yeah, you know the truth now, or well, you believe what you think is the truth. You're like, oh, this is the right way of thinking versus what I was taught. So then there's this like backlash against what you came from, right? And so then anyone who is not agreeing with you now is like, you like have this passion inside of you, and they call it the cage stage because they're like, you should be locked up in a cage until you calm down because you're just going to be destructive and hurt people. And so it's really funny because like I think I went through a variation of that a couple of years ago, although I'm not Calvinist. And then our friends who were Calvinists like look back and they're like, oh, I was definitely in a cage stage. I should not have been let out. And they're like, and they'll be like, I'm the most radical Calvinist I've ever been, but I have the most empathy that I ever have too, because I understand that like people have different beliefs and that's okay. But I love when I concept. Right. I love messing with my friends who are Calvinists. I'm like, if they're like upset about differences in the theology we have, I'm like, what? You can't be upset though. Like
I was predestined to believe this.
yeah,
You
I
were
was
believe
predestined to not agree with you, and so maybe this is to teach you something. I don't know.
that.
And then they're
It's
like,
so funny.
I tease back and forth, but
Yeah.
I love it. And that's what I think I really like about your music is how heavy it is in the love of God and theology, right? But also the humility, like you said, like you have the content of theology in songs like Underdress and Knowing God, or like I Need You, and or even Not Safe. That's taken from influenced by C.S. Lewis, right?
Yeah, Chronicles of Narnia.
Yeah. I showed my dad that, and he's like, and my fiance, they're like, hey, that's from Narnia. I am like,
thank goodness. The amount of messages I've gotten of what does not safe mean, help me. I literally have a caged message, or not caged. I'm still in the cage thing. I have a message in my notes that I just copy and paste. Hey there, thanks for asking. Basically what this means.
That's hilarious. That's so funny. But, yeah, because I'm like, I don't know. As far as Narnia is concerned, I'm probably like, I know Christians are supposed to love Narnia, but I just never read all the books, and I didn't like the movies that much, so I didn't know that was from Narnia. And my fiance said, I was like, "Is it really?" I was like, "They're like, yeah." He talks about Aslan, and there's this area was like, "Oh, he's good, but he's not safe. Like he can mess you up."
Yeah, 100p. Yeah,
and like and I love that. That's like the same thing about our God, where it's like, oh, God is like, he's kind and loving and receiving, but he's not like safe. And then it kind of takes on the vein of where. I think it's in Hebrews that says it's a terrifying thing to fall into the hands of a living God.
Yeah.
It's like what?
Yeah.
No, yeah. I mean, it's just like it's a very westernized view to believe that the God of the universe is comfortable and safe. And it's just like this very it's very millennial Gen Z to believe that the Almighty God. Safety is one of the factors that because especially with the Western view and the modern view of what safe means, it means it's in your comfort zone, not just you won't be damaged. It means it's in your comfort zone and all these things, and you have control over it. And I can't control God. I've tried, doesn't work.
Right.
It's just like a very. I always thought about it where I'm just like, there is intimacy and God is a safe place to be. But if our view of safety is comfort zone, fits within our boxes, we can define it and control it. I've never seen a less safe thing.
Right.
Yeah. And that's like, you were saying you didn't listen to too much of Christian hip hop, but one of the lyrics that one of the guys we listen to says is, if you want to make God laugh, just tell him your plans. And I think that kind of sits in the same thing of like, he's not safe. Like you might give your life to Christ and he'll say, all right, go to the Middle East and be a martyr. And you're like, okay. Yeah.
It's not what I signed up for.
Are you sure you want me to do that? I could volunteer with the youth group downtown,
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah. And all power to them,
Yeah. And then I want to ask about one more lyric, then we can go on to a conversation about culture and Christianity and all that stuff, which is always a fun topic. But in the song I Need You, there's this part where like the music kind of fades out and you're like talking a bit, and then you go into singing again. It says, you got to let it hurt, our image is the only thing we're worth, his is the kingdom and yours is the church, smile with your teeth, your bruises make a lovely accessory, have some guts, kid, this is ministry. I love that part. I heard that, I was like, I really appreciate this, because I think I know I know how I heard it and how I interpreted it, but I'm curious about what was when you were writing that, what were you feeling and what were you like maybe battling with or frustrations with and stuff like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the lyric has evolved to me throughout since I wrote it. But it's exactly, it's just this thing. Okay, so we've got you got to let it hurt, our image is the only thing we're worth. There's a decent amount of facetiousness in what I'm saying, in the sense of like, you got to let it hurt because our image is the only thing we're worth, kind of thing, where it's just this like, hey, come on, hey, clean up, let it hurt only as much as we're comfortable with. It's this, I broke
Okay.
my wrist punching through the wall in the parsonage, but my congregation can't see me crying. It's like
Right.
hurt to the point that you can say, oh yeah, I felt it, but never enough. The most common thing when, and I'm very guilty of this, is like when teaching on something, it's like, this, I went through this thing recently, but it's always after, after we went through it. It's never, hey, I'm going through a really painful thing right now. It's always, I was going through this thing and God brought me through it. And it's just like it's vulnerable with a cap, it's vulnerability with a cap. It's like, I was going through this thing. It's like, wow, super brave of you to tell us something you already figured out. But hey, I'm going through a lot. And it's with my friendships even, just being honest as something's happening. With my fiance, hey, I'm going through something. Hey, I was feeling really, instead of saying, hey, I was feeling really hurt that, 2 hours ago, is saying, hey, I'm feeling a lot of anger, so it was similar, growing up in church, it was never something that was put on me but like I said, I was 13, not a middle schooler leading high school worship. And so there was an expectation of myself I was like, if I'm going through something, I have to figure it out because I have to show that I'm brave, strong enough, and big enough to be doing what I'm doing. And then, so we got that part, our image is the only thing. His is the kingdom, yours is the church. That's like a very, what I was basically trying to say is like, we'll give God the kingdom, but we got to keep the church like looking clean,
Right.
Because Jesus, he wept and he was dirty sometimes, and like, he wasn't cotton candy white Jesus, it was just like
homeless,
so it's like this thing where it's like, okay, well, we'll give him the kingdom, but hey, Central Coast Baptist Church is ours, this thing,
right.
we have a standard to withhold, to uphold, get that jacket clean, wipe off your shirt, and if you're going to cry, let it just be a second. And then we get into my favorite part of the whole song, which is just, that smile with your teeth, your bruises make a lovely accessory. So have some guts, kid. This is ministry. Part of it is self-talk. Hey, have some guts, kid. We're in for the long run. We're you didn't sign up to have an easy life. You didn't sign up to have this. And then there's the other side of this. Almost everything I say has two sides of it. The other sides of it is just kind of like this sarcastic, like, have some guts, kid. This is ministry. Like, fake it till you make it kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like if you're hurting, get through it, and then you can let people know in 2 months. And so
a great testimony.
But it's like, hey, I know it's like, hey, this is gonna be a great testimony if I can just get through it. But no one knows that you're hurting. Not vulnerable. Like, I've like I'm in a weird place where when I hear things now from people, from any of the stuff where it's just like, I hear like, I'm just gonna be vulnerable for a second. About a month ago, I was feeling this a lot, and I'm just like, didn't we get coffee a month ago? Like, hey, weren't we together? And
I didn't hear anything about that.
That's good.
Yeah, so it's just like, so I think with I Need You it's a lot of this, like, I feel like with ministry, growing up, I let myself be vulnerable and I was human with a cap, a lot of times, growing up the church kid, and I'm very thankful for my upbringing. I'm very thankful I was raised in a home where I was, I was part of the church, a part of this. I'm not at all anti-church. I go to church every single Sunday, but there was a cap on how human I could be, that I set for myself. No one set it for me, but it was this thing, these expectations. Gable's 13 and he's leading here. Obviously he's going to take his dad's job when he retires. But if you cry, or if you cry, oh, he's just really emotional. He's a really emotional kid. Maybe he can be leading on Sunday. Like, he's just a kid, stuff like that, where it's just, so it's just like this thing where I feel like it's probably been one of the more relatable parts to our music for people, of just like this thing, have some guts, kid. This is ministry. Hey, 1, you're fighting a good fight. 2, you get to hear how stupid it sounds to be like, don't hurt, it's for God.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and so like it's just like the dumbest thing. You know, it's like, hey, I know that human problem. You're not allowed to have a human problem because
Yeah.
for our, you know, for God, but it's not. It's a lot of times it's just for like church.
Hmm.
And you know, and so
I
like,
like. Okay.
yeah, no, all yours, all yours.
I was gonna say I like that you have two sides to everything. On one hand, it's like, yeah, ministry does hurt, and like you're gonna at some point you're gonna have to toughen up. You can't like just sit on the sidelines because it's hard. You know, like you gotta get up there. But at the same time, don't neglect your emotional health and don't try to fake it. And don't, you know, because I think like it's comforting to know, like, because we're in full-time ministry and like we work with people all the time and full-time. We say ministry, quote
Ministry,
unquote. We do ministry.
Well, we do ministry. I'm just the whole conversation like what is full-time ministry? But yeah. We're in full-time ministry.
We are full-time Christian workers. But
There you go.
and we deal with people, right? And the thing about that, I think over the years I've learned that's been comforting is like people are messy, and that's not a bad thing, and it's not a shameful thing to have struggles. And that also means though, like because we're dealing with people and people are messy and in sanctification, hurts are bound to happen. You know, you're bound to have someone that's a Christian that is in authority, or maybe also your Christian like co-worker. Like you expect Christians to be like, oh, you should never get angry and you should be the most patient. And I'm allowed to get upset when I'm having a bad day, but don't you be upset with me because you take the plank out of your eye and I'm not going to take the log out. You know,
because I'm an elder. Once you hit the elder status,
you're perfect.
Yeah. And it's like when I heard like have some guts, kid, it's ministry. Like I hear the side of it that's like, hey, this is hard, but it's okay.
Yeah.
You know, that's what I hear that. And then we had a conversation. We were driving to the beach and we were listening to it in my car. Me and Derry and a couple of our friends were having a conversation like, oh, what does this lyric mean? Because on one hand, we do hear the side of like the facetiousness and like, oh, just toughen up, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And it's like, well, we don't want to do that necessarily, but we also don't want to just collapse at any moment of hardship.
Yeah.
You know,
you know, and I think especially in the last 2 years, it could just be that there's media, or it could be happening more. You see people, you know, a lot of the Christians who are very much in the public eye having life, like blowing up their lives, you know? And you also see, you know, people even just abandon the faith. And so on two sides of things, one, you know, accountability is very important. Second, there's probably a lot of people who have been doing the dance for a long time and they just forgot that, like, you know, when there's always, when the fan is blowing and it's going and you're just like, you don't even notice, you don't hear anything. Then you turn it off and you realize there was sound there.
Right.
You know, you do the dance for so long that you don't realize that the fan's playing or the fan's spinning until something happens. And then you're just like, oh, I was in ministry and I was just doing what I knew how to do. There was so much other stuff happening, you know, and then life is happening and all these things are happening and there's emotional collapses, moral collapses, there's family collapses, all these things. And then all of a sudden the fan turns off and it's just like, oh yeah, I was a pastor. I thought I was a celebrity. And like these things, it's like, oh, I was living like a celebrity, but I was doing, you know, does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And so I just think like you see that so much you see so much of like this is ministry. What is ministry anymore? You know, it's exactly what you're saying. What does full-time ministry mean? But it's like, hey, have some guts, kid. This is ministry. You can't be hurt. I'm like, well, I'm the facilities. I'm the custodial guy. Like, why can't I cry? And so, you know, it's exactly what you said. You know, it's a good fight you're fighting, and it is worth it in the end. And then the other side of things is just like, hey, you are a human person dealing with human people. I guarantee when the God of the universe, you know, is here, it's gonna be different emotions. You know, like when he is here in human form, or however we all. You know, Kirk Cameron, Left Behind, whatever, you know, however it happens, you know, you know, you're going to have different emotions than you have right now, but right now you have them. And it's just like, you know, if all you're ever doing is toughening up, as soon as the fan turns off, you're going to be like, ooh. one, I don't believe anymore. Two, my family just fell apart. Like all these things.
Right.
If you keep doing a dance without remembering why you're doing it, toughening up, hardening yourself, hardening your heart, all these things, without feeling it, that's just what happens.
Yeah.
Fan gets it.
Yeah, that's I like the metaphor of the fan. Do you listen to a lot of podcasts?
Not a ton. I listen to Brett Goldstein's podcast. He plays Roy Kent in the TV show Ted Lasso.
Okay. Oh, really?
And then I listen to a songwriting one called "And the Writer Is," but that's pretty much it.
Nice.
Okay.
Nice.
It's called "And the Writer Is" or "As."
And the Writer Is, yeah. They'll interview the writers of songs that you didn't know they wrote those songs.
Oh, cool! Wow,
it's really cool. So like you'll talk to someone and it's a writer that you recognize them because they just had a hit song, but then you're like, hey, what was the first song you wrote? And it's like, oh, they've written 40 other songs I've heard. They just weren't on.
Yeah.
It's the cool thing to behind the scenes that no one's a smash hit star in like in those things. Like even Rebecca Black, when she had Friday, had things before that led up.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was just curious because there's a podcast called The Rise and Fall of Mars Hill that kind of talks about all that celebrity and rise to fame as a pastor and ministry, and things get muddled, and then when everything crashes, what's left, and it explores that whole thing, which is really fascinating for me, one, but also like, I don't know, I have a big heart for the American church, and as the American church, like how can we like be the healthiest we can be? And in America, we do have this celebrity culture. So yeah, I guess like I'm curious about what your thoughts are. Like, how do Christians in America, or maybe the Western world or whatnot, because we have listeners all over the globe and from different various economic statuses of countries. But yeah, like for the culture you're in, what is something that you think that Christians would like? What was the main thing that Christians would focus on, where they can start to that healing process of maybe representing Jesus better and not falling into that trap of celebrity idolatry and stuff?
Yeah. It's a tricky question just because I have no idea.
Well, that's totally fine. I don't know if anyone has. There's not like a silver bullet,
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing that I always, I feel like I've witnessed more than anything is people being too holy to have human needs.
Yeah.
And then when they constantly neglect said human needs, and then that's when I can't tell you how many people, the people who were the most bought in during BSSM, they were always the people staying late, always the people on the floor, stuff like that. I've been shocked to see that they've fizzled out. A lot of them have left the faith and changed paths a lot.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was just because it's just like, hey, have you slept? No, I was locked into the word. I'm like, hey, awesome, but you should take a nap, and but like, so you see longevity, but then you see like, there's people who are, it's a hard thing because the more I've grown, the more I've seen amazing people who are at the top of whatever they're doing, whether it's worship music, popular music. I've seen amazing people. And I've seen people who I'm like, oh, I wouldn't be able to tell you apart from anyone I met at a bar. And so it's an interesting thing. I don't know the solution because I don't want to tell people to be less on fire and less passionate. But there is a thing of like, hey, acknowledge that you got a heart. It's a muscle, and neglecting it is just like anything. If the oxygen's getting sucked out of your room, the natural thing you're going to do is squirm and try to get out.
Right.
And so
good.
From your room, the more of a problem you got, and
the
more you're going to squirm to get out.
Say that last part a bit because the connection messed up, so you cut out for a bit.
Oh, okay. No, basically what I was saying is, like, if the oxygen's being sucked out of your room, you're going to be squirming and freaking out to get out of the room, right? And so the more you deprive yourself of oxygen, of human connection, of all these things, the crazier you get.
Yeah.
because you're trying to, and that's when like these big blow-ups happen. It's because people deprive themselves of basic needs for so long. You know, of human connection, of counseling, of all of this stuff, for the sake of, you know, good things. You know, there's not a problem with it, but like, you know, there is like, you know, the quicker you rise, the faster you fall. I don't think it has to be like that, you know. It's just like, hey, eat a sandwich, you're gonna starve. Drink some water, you're gonna get dehydrated, you know. Or instead of, you know.
Right. That's good. That's good. I do know that you have to get going here in a little bit, correct?
Yes, I got some wedding planning to do.
Amazing. So before we let you go,
I have one question. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Are you gonna go on to something?
Well, it was gonna be the question we always ask everyone.
Oh yeah. How much time do you have before I have to go?
I've got about 5-7 minutes.
Okay.
My question might be kind of long, so if you don't want to answer it, we can just skip on to this one. But it seems like there was, like we talked about at the beginning, kind of this era of like the golden age of like Christian music, kind of. Yeah. And we kind of went into like a sort of like this cringy kind of slump, like as of late, where like no one listens to Christian radio and stuff anymore. And it's kind of a mediocre kind of brand of music. But now I feel like we've got some fringe artists like really bringing it back, right? And I feel like you guys are one of them. I feel like Half Alive is really good. And then like the songwriting. The songwriting of Christian Zema, like I feel like is really beautiful as well. Where do you think this is going to be like sort of a revival at all for Christian music, or it's just going to be like a little blip of like we got a couple good bands, or you think it'll be like a rise and inspiration to a few people, or what do you think about that?
I think it'll be some sort of a revival, and I don't think it's going to look the way that a lot of us want it to. Just in the sense of thinking about who listens to radio still. Older people.
Yeah, right.
In their car. I don't listen to much radio. You guys might listen to radio, but you know, we don't listen to Christian radio. The people who are going to listen to our music, I'd love for them to be, you know, I'd love for that demographic of people to be listening to our music, but it's just not that common. And so I think if there is a big Christian music, Christian band revival, it'll happen digitally. You know, it'll happen through social media. It'll happen through Spotify, iTunes, Apple Music. I think there are some really great bands. But in terms of taking back K-Love and Erewhon, I don't see it happening, mostly because I have one song on there and it doesn't really get played much because it's still a little bit too weird. And it's like my most like normal song, and it's Homecoming.
Yeah, generic.
You know?
We do Homecoming here for some of our worship nights.
That's sweet. I love the song. It's a super special song to me. But it is shocking where I'm like, oh, it's Bethel music song, and it's still not, you know, taking off in radio. So I think I'm not the person to ask about radio because I haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah. Do you have any bands that you think are really good that are up and coming like that you'd want to shout out at all? Totally fine if you don't want to. But
no, that's great. Yeah, we had
just me. Gable Price and Friends, really good one.
Like, well, there's Gable Price and Friends, Gable Price. I really enjoy. There's a band called Mirrors, Mirous. There's a guy.
I think I listened to them.
Yeah, they're great. And then there's a guy named John Jinhan. We played a show with him a long time ago, and he's really, really great. And then in terms of bands, I don't know a ton, just because there's just not a ton of bands happening right now. But yeah, there's just always people. Noah Paul Harrison, he's my best friend. He makes amazing music that's on that Christian side of things. But yeah, I think that, you know, the big dogs are, of course, you know, Chris and you know, still Switchfoot's crushing it.
They haven't stopped.
Yeah.
All right, our last question.
We ask everyone who comes on the show this, so we have to ask you this.
Okay.
You're in a gladiator arena. You get a melee weapon of your choosing from any time in, like, from history up until now. So no like future stuff like lightsabers. And then, which we should establish a while ago. People could have really done a lot. What is the biggest predatory animal you can take on with a melee weapon of your choosing?
And you have to, like, this is to the death.
Okay, yeah. Geesh. I would have to say, you know, I say some sort of gun, but when you get to like the big things, it's not going to do much work, you know?
You can't
I
have a
would
gun. You have
say-
to have like a melee weapon,
Like a
something
handheld,
Okay.
like a.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
You can have a gun that has no ammo in it.
Yeah, you can hit him with a gun if you want.
It's not going to do much damage.
No, it wouldn't.
Geesh. That's a great question.
Do you want us to give you our answers and then we can?
Yes, let's hear yours.
Okay, so mine, I still haven't changed it. So everyone who listens to the podcast, sorry, it's like the 5th time you heard this. I'm taking a small dagger, not small, a good sized dagger, and a hyena.
And
Taking
a
down
hyena. Okay. Okay.
We
Cool.
had one guest on who said she could take on a bear,
She's crazy.
and we said, "No, Rachel, you cannot do that."
Yeah.
Yeah.
What she
Okay.
She said a sword or a spear or something with a bear. I was like, no, not a chance.
No, yeah, no.
Derek,
she said-
what's yours again?
She said the swinging ball thing.
Oh yeah, a mace.
A mace. Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
my gosh, she's not gonna do that.
I really like what our last guest said.
Aiden?
Yeah, I really like what Aiden said. I don't remember the weapon he
Oh yeah,
said.
he had a really.
It's that old weapon that's like a spear with like a sword that
Yeah.
like kind of curves out on the end. Like it has
Oh,
like
yeah.
two like a spear that goes
Yeah.
out, but then like has 2 edges on it too. It's really long. I take that, and I think I could take on a pretty big cat because
Yeah.
as long as I keep them outside of the range of like their pouncing,
Yeah.
I feel like they can't really go like laterally, and
You
so
can't.
I can take them down.
You can't. Anyone who takes. Oh, I'll hear your answer before I give my opinion on big cats.
Okay, so I think I'll go. I'm going with a sword, but not just any sword.
Nice.
It's the sword of Godric Gryffindor
Wow,
from
there you go.
Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets.
Okay.
And and I will, we can take away the magic from it, if it just looks cool. I'll just take
Okay.
that. I think I could take on a wolf.
Wow.
Nice. I think you
Yeah.
could too.
All right.
Yeah, I think you could too.
Yeah,
Nice.
You
That's
guys
a
know
good
how
answer.
big wolves are?
Yeah, they're pretty big.
I know, but yeah, but
I
I mean,
believe
it's a
in Gable.
sword.
He's like, yeah, I'm in California. I see him all the time.
Yeah, I would lure it and then pounce with it.
Oh,
Obviously,
all right.
its body would take me, and I'd catch a couple claws, but like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
there's no
I'm
laws
expecting
on-
to catch a couple claws with a hyena too.
Yeah, but you get
Yeah.
that killing blow for sure.
Yeah, the
My
killing blow,
mindset-
it's not gonna
Yeah,
get
my
knocked
mindset is I'm waiting for it to attack me,
Mhm.
and I'm gonna put up my arm and let it bite my arm, and I'm gonna stab its neck. I'll lose my arm. I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah, I
doing
mean,
it.
it's either that or lose your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rather go into the kingdom of God with one arm, right? Is that what Jesus says? I think that's what he was talking about in that parable.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
he's
so too.
talking about this podcast. Yeah.
Jesus was like, "Hey, Peter, you're in an arena down the street, okay?"
So freaking funny. All right, well,
That's
we know you
awesome.
got to go.
Yeah. Have fun wedding planning. Congrats on getting married
Yep.
soon.
Hey, thank you
Yep.
so much. Thank you so much. Hey, I really appreciate you guys having me on here. It was a really great
Of
time.
course.
Absolutely, yeah.
Thanks for coming out. You can
Anytime
definitely
you
come
wanna
on.
come on, yeah.
Come on again. We can discuss some more
Yeah.
things. Maybe whenever you release another
always feel free
single
if you
or
wanna
album or
advertise.
not, come on and promote
That
it
sounds good.
and whatnot. If you're ever in Hawaii, hit us up. We got a place where you can stay.
Yep.
It's not
That
as
sounds
expensive
great.
as hotels.
Well, perfect. Hey, I appreciate
right.
you guys. You guys have a good one. And to all your listeners, goodbye.
All right. See ya.
All right. See you guys.
See ya. Hey, thanks for listening, guys. Be sure to go check out Gable Price. It
Mhm.
just totally slipped my mind for a second. Go listen to Gable Price. He has a bunch of good music.
He's awesome, yeah.
Personal favorite of the songs, if you're into slower music, would be Repentance and Communion.
Mhm.
Would be good. If you're into like harder, upbeat music, that'd be I Need You, Not Safe, Heretic's good. Demons, I think, is one of his most popular songs. That's really good. But yeah, have a good week and thanks for coming back. See ya.
Bye.